Welcome to another episode of Ask Dr. Charles. Today we have a question coming from Grandpa. Grandpa, just come on out here and tell me what you got. Hey, you know what? He has a Capsela! A Capsela construction set! I used to play with those when I was a little boy! You want to know all about those? Well, guess what? I made a video about that! Let's roll that video here!
Today, we're taking a trip back to the 1980s to explore a toy that's equal parts nostalgia and engineering genius, Capsela. If you grew up in that era, you might remember these cool, transparent spheres that let you build everything from cars to boats. But did you know Capsela also had a high-tech twist? It could connect to the Commodore 64, one of the most iconic home computers of all time. In this video, we'll cover the history of Capsela and then dive deep into how it teamed up with the Commodore 64 to bring robotics to kids' bedrooms. Stick around, there's a lot to unpack. Part 1, the history of Capsela. Let's start with the basics. Capsela was a construction toy unlike anything else in the 80s. It was first dreamed up by the Mitsubishi Pencil Company, yep, the same folks behind Uniball pens, in Japan back in 1975. The idea was simple but brilliant: clear plastic capsules, each with a specific function like motors, gears, or switches that you could snap together using octagonal connectors. You could build moving machines, cars, tanks, cranes, even boats with pontoons that floated in your bathtub. It was like Lego meets Engineering 101. By the late 70s and into the 80s, Capsela made its way to the US and other markets, licensed to companies like Play Jure and later VTech and Educational Insights. It came in all sorts of sets, from basic kits with 30 parts to massive ones like the Capsela 1000 with over 100 pieces. There were even themed spin-offs like Space Link, which leaned into sci-fi vibes with cockpits and little action figures, though it skipped the motors. Capsela wasn't just a toy, it was a learning tool. It taught kids about mechanics, physics, and even electricity, all while letting their imaginations run wild. Shop teachers loved it, and it built a loyal fanbase among future engineers and tinkerers. But as the 80s rolled on, Capsela started to evolve, and that's where things get really interesting, because it didn't just stay a standalone toy. It stepped into the digital age with a connection to the Commodore 64. Part 2, Capsela meets the Commodore 64. Now, let's talk about the Commodore 64. If you don't know, this was the home computer of the 80s. Released in 1982, it sold millions and became a legend for gaming, programming, and hacking. So how does a plastic toy hook up with a computer? Enter the Capsela Robotic Workshop, a game-changer that hit the scene in January 1987, thanks to a company called Access Software. The Robotic Workshop was a special kit that merged Capsela's mechanical magic with the Commodore 64's computing power. Picture this: over 50 Capsela parts, motors, gears, wheels, even sensors, bundled with an electronic control unit that plugged right into the Commodore 64's user port. That's the slot on the back of the C64 usually used for peripherals like printers or modems. The kit also came with a floppy disk loaded with programming software, a manual packed with 50 tutorial projects, and, get this, an infrared remote control in some versions. This wasn't just a toy anymore, it was a robotics platform. So how did it work? The control unit connected to the C64's user port, which gave you access to 8 input-output lines controlled by the computer's CIA chip. That's the complex interface adapter for the tech nerds out there. Using Commodore BASIC, you could write simple programs with commands like poke and peek to control the Capsela motors. For example, setting a bit high on the user port might spin a motor forward, while flipping it low would stop it. The kit even included a ROM that added extra basic commands, making it easier to boss your robot around. One standout example is a robot called Charlie, built by hobbyists using the Robotic Workshop. Charlie had 3 motors, one for driving wheels, one for steering, and one for a decorative propeller. It used Capsela's gear capsules, like worm gears for 90-degree turns, and even had an infrared sensor. With the C64 in command, you could program Charlie to roll around, steer, and react to its environment. It was like a proto-Lego Mindstorms, a full decade before Mindstorms hit shelves in 1998. The kid didn't stop with the Commodore 64 either. Access Software later adapted it for Apple, Atari, and IBM computers, but the C64 version was the star, partly because the Commodore was everywhere, outselling its rivals and popping up in toy stores and department stores alike. Capsela's robotic workshop wasn't just a gimmick, it was aimed at kids 8 to 12, teaching them programming and robotics in a way that felt like play. Imagine being a kid in 1987, typing code into your C64 to make your Capsela creation come to life. Pretty mind-blowing for the time. Part 3. Why it mattered and where it went. So why was this Capsela Commodore 64 combo such a big deal? For one, it bridged the gap between physical toys and digital tech at a time when computers were just starting to invade homes. It showed kids that coding wasn't just for games, it could control real stuff. And it came at a perfect moment. The Commodore 64 was at its peak, Capsela was riding high, and robotics was becoming a buzzword. But Capsela's heyday didn't last forever. By the late 80s and into the 90s, it struggled to keep up with flashier toys like Lego Technic. The educational market didn't save it, and after bouncing between manufacturers, it faded away, though it left a lasting mark on those who grew up with it. The robotic workshop, though rare today, still pops up in retro computing circles, and fans on sites like Hackaday and Reddit rave about how it sparked their love for engineering. If you're lucky, you might snag a set on eBay, but don't expect it to be cheap. Nostalgia comes with a price tag. And while Capsela itself isn't around anymore, its spirit lives on in modern STEM toys like IQ Key, made by the same folks who inherited Capsela's legacy. That's the story of Capsela and its awesome connection to the Commodore 64, a toy that went from plastic spheres to programmable robots. What do you think? Did you ever play with Capsela, or maybe even hook it up to a C64? Drop your memories in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this dive into 80s tech, hit that like button and subscribe for more retro goodness. Until next time, keep tinkering.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna go play with my Capsela! You know, one of the problems with this Capsela is over time these connectors, they get brittle, and sometimes the plastic, it cracks, and it won't hold my cubes on here like it used to. But you know what you can do? If you have a 3D printer, you can go onto Thingiverse and print your own connectors for these. Let's go do that.
Now I turned on my computer, I'm on Thingiverse's website, and I'm going to type in Capsela, and this is what shows up. I'm just going to browse here till I find the Capsela part that I want. Well, I just want this coupler here, so I'll click on that. Just ignore this pop-up window here. Next thing I want to do is click on Download All Files. From here we wait for the download to pop up in the upper right corner. Once your program's downloaded, open it up with your slicer program. The program I use is Cura, but you don't have to use Cura, you can use any slicing program. And you know, since I'm at it, I might as well add a couple more Capsela couplers to print to my build plate. After that, I'm going to slice them, save them to my micro SD card, put it in my printer, and we're going to print. Isn't it just satisfying watching my printer doing all that hard work?
Alright, let's see if my 3D printed coupler will work. It works! And that was 3D printed off my 3D printer for free! I wonder what else I can 3D print. Oh, I better end the show! Oh, I almost forgot to end the show! Let's do the Charles dance! Dun 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 dun. Yeah! See you later, alligator. Don't forget to like,